usual, please adjust your motivation that we would listen to these teachings, however elementary, however basic, for the benefit of all other sentient beings, and that whatever we may learn or retain, that we will use that to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. That's the motivation, the Mahaya motivation. Then, secondly, not to pay attention too much to the person as such, but listen to the words. When listening to the words, listen to the meaning of the words. When listening to the meaning, listening to the definitive meaning and not the interpretive meaning of the words. So motivation is very, very important. So last time, just to recap, we spoke about how taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha is not just walking in off the street and saying, well, you know, I take refuge in you. There is a prerequisite. Everything is dependent arising. Everything has causes and conditions. And the cause to take refuge is the realization that for the majority of us, after we pass away, that we will be reborn in a lower state of existence. That's the cause of taking refuge. Having the fear that our negative karma outnumbers our positive karma. So all the negative things that we have done are the things that will actually propel us to be reborn in a lower state of existence. How does that work? That works through the consciousness, the subtle consciousness which leaves the body when our merit of this life has ceased. It leaves the body and it needs, through the propellant karma, through the actions that we have performed in body, speech and mind, through that propellant karma, that consciousness passes through the bardo state and must take a rebirth within 49 days. Why must it take a rebirth? It must take a rebirth because the propellant karma forces it to take on the existence that we have created the karmic imprints in this particular life, specifically. Not necessarily just in this life, but previous lifetimes as well. So, by not understanding the law of cause and effect, by not having an understanding of future rebirths, by not understanding really the true nature of the mind, then we can easily come to an erroneous conclusion that I've done nothing wrong. I'm okay. I haven't killed anyone. I haven't hurt anybody. I've got a wonderful life. Life is wonderful, sweet. That may appear to be true on the surface, but should you live this life to a maximum of 100 or so years without having done anything wrong to anyone or anything, not even killed an insect out of malicious intent, doesn't mean that you don't have the karmic seeds within your consciousness, that you will be reborn in a lower state of existence. It is just this time that you have a precious human rebirth, meaning not only you're born human, but you have a karmic connection with the Buddha Dharma. That comes through the blessings of the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and our Lama in a previous lifetime. Yeah? So, in previous lifetimes we have prayed, we have dedicated merit to be reborn as a human, to come in contact with the Buddha Dhamma. Well, that time is now. This is that life. And so the question is, what are we doing with this life? It seems so peaceful and nice and very tranquil. But yet we get very much sidetracked by that, or numbed by that peacefulness that we have. It's very easy just to have all the food we wish, or the comfort of home, spending money to go on holidays whenever we feel like it, all these wonderful luxuries that we have. and take that for granted, that will go on and on and on and on. The thing is, when that karma lapses, when it finishes, it will not happen again, because we have expended that karma. We haven't done anything to renew that, to extend it, to make it even better. And that's the thing that we need to contemplate on, having that fear of, I don't know what's actually going to happen after I pass away. Where am I going to go? So death itself is no problem. The physiological process of death, no problem whatsoever. No pain, etc. But the fear is, where is the consciousness, where is our consciousness going to be propelled to take rebirth? That's the fear as a Buddhist. What will happen to me? Where will I take rebirth? So all we have to do is to know what we were in our previous lifetime. We just observe the life we have now, what we think, where we live, all our environment. And that will give you a hint as to what you've done in a previous lifetime. What you are going to be in your future lifetime, then just look at now, how you are thinking, how you are acting, how you are speaking. And where is that consciousness going to take you in a future lifetime? So the Buddha said that the majority of us will be taking rebirth in the lower state of existence, simply because we are not practicing virtue. Those of us who will be reborn in a higher state of existence are the equivalent of dust that you may pick up on the tip of your fingertip. So it's that. The odds are so astronomically against us to actually achieve a higher state of existence, simply because we are not practicing virtue. And virtue, by definition, is any act in body, speech, or mind that is a cause for our future enlightenment. And we can't do that because we're too busy interacting with all our family and all worldly people. So unless you have a Buddha in the family, you're married to an enlightened being, or you have your brother-in-law or your cousin is a Buddha, then you have absolutely no connection with the Buddha's teachings. You have no key or ticket to get out of samsara. You only have a ticket or a key to open the door to a lower state of existence. Why? Because everyone that you know is qualified to lead us to a lower state of existence. So we say, the Sangha, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the three jewels are qualified to free us. Yes, they are. But all sentient beings are qualified to actually take us to a lower state of existence. Why? Because that is all we do, night and day. If you see somebody very attractive, and you think, oh, gee, maybe I should ask that person out or something, it's a pretty good, and you get obsessed by it. It's a pretty good, it's a pretty good notion that sooner or later you're actually going to have a dream about that person. That's how attached we are. That's how strong our desire is, that we're actually, it manifests in our dream. In other words, it's 24 hours a day. If we have problems at work, there's a good idea we're going to be dreaming about that as well. If we have problems with the family, with arguments or anything like that, or you're worried about somebody, sickness or something like that, there's a good indication that you may have a dream, or you may say a nightmare about that. Once again, you can't escape it. It's there. When we're not conscious of it, it's in the back of our mind. It's constantly there. So that is an indication that there's no way out. Whichever way you turn, it's always the same. Everybody that we know has the same problems. And that's the basis that's the prerequisite, I beg your pardon. That's the prerequisite to finding refuge. A place to hide. Refuge by definition, a place to take sanctuary, a place to hide, to shelter, to be comforted. Yeah? But we can't get that from worldly people, because worldly people can only teach us worldly things. How to get a job, how to interact with other people, all these social behavioral norms, which are very important, of course they are, but for us who are seeking a spiritual way out of suffering, those things are to be abandoned. That doesn't mean you have to be a monk or a nun. It means we no longer take those things to be of importance. What people think of us, it doesn't make any difference, really. Now, that's a big thing to say, yeah? But it's a very, very difficult thing to abandon. Of course it matters what people think of us, because we're so attached, because also we need to be part of society, peer group pressure. It's important to be part of a group for successful purposes, in order to get a job, in order to find someone to marry, etc., etc., be part of society. Anybody who is ostracized by society quickly develops psychological problems. It's like being put in solitary confinement. The second worst thing you can do to somebody is to put them in solitary confinement. The worst thing is to execute them.
What about yogi?
Well, we're talking about normal people here. We're talking about worldly people. I'm building up to the motivation to renounce this, to realize that the world we live in, whatever you do, we're always dirty. Our hands are always dirty. Yeah? You give somebody a present, but you expect something in return, even if it's a thank you. I gave her a Rolex watch. She didn't even say thank you. So what's happened to the present now? It's become anger. It's become resentment. And so it goes. Once you have that, that's it. You've just contaminated the whole situation. That person now is suspicious in your eyes. You're no longer like, yeah. Now you expect something in return.
But when you said that me act of giving a Rolex watch means that you have already given value to essentially what
Sure,
is now.
yeah.
So then you've already created sankhara already, even before you give the gift.
But within the norms of our society, to be giving gifts, it shows appreciation. You know, depending on the context that you're giving this, it could be just as a birthday present or whatever it is. You know, those things still fall within the normal behaviour of society. The more expensive the gift, the more appreciation that we are showing. That's what that indicates. That's just normal. That's human behaviour. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But what is wrong with that is the emotion that we attach to it and the expectations that we put to it. Because once that supposed good motivated gift starts making us angry or jealous or resentment, that's it. What happens if she shows that watch to some friends and they all get jealous? Or they show it to their boyfriends and their boyfriends get jealous of that guy. Now he's got peer group pressure because he's made everybody look bad. He has made all the other boyfriends look bad. Huh? So now he's a pariah within the eyes of those other boyfriends. That's a true thing, you know. And so people get jealous of other people because, you know, they've got better cars, better standard of living, etc., etc. So society is only perpetuating our worldly behaviour, our worldly attitude. It is only ingraining the motivation to remain in samsara more and more and more, until eventually you realise that the ultimate betrayal is that your body will let you down. You'll get sick, you'll get old, and you'll have to pass away. So what good, you know, you'll still have the fancy car in the garage. Wonderful. But you'll have to go now. We have to go where our karma takes us. And it's that fear that we don't have to be 80 years old or whatever it is. That's the mistake. That I'll practice Buddhism, I'll practice my spiritual practice after I retire. What? You don't seem to understand what you're saying, you know, because you could die tomorrow. You could have a car accident. You could get a disease tomorrow. And now you have to, what takes most people 20 to 30 years to understand, to get a handle on some kind of spiritual practice. You think you can do that in 6 months? I don't think so. It's unrealistic. So, irrespective of our age, and it's better if we start young, we start observing what we're doing. We start we lay our spiritual, in this case Buddhism, our spiritual practice as the foundation, and we build on top of that. We build our career on top of those, on the ethics of Buddhism. We base our relationships, personal, professional, etc., relationships on that. Everything that we do, how we treat our next door neighbour, is based, for us, on Buddhist ethics. Everything is based on that foundation. If we do that, by the time you get to 80, you're going to say, great, I've done everything I can, that's it, I'm ready, I'm looking forward to it. And that's the best type of practitioner. The one that passes away without any kind of regret. They've done it. They know through their experience of decades and decades of practicing, through their realizations, the yogis, they know where they're going to take rebirth. And in fact, all the yogis, when they get together, the joke amongst the yogis is that if you can't tell where you're going to be reborn, or if you can't tell when you're going to die, what day you're going to die, and where you're going to take rebirth, you're not a yogi. That's the joke amongst the yogis, So until it's possible to get to that stage. And that's the whole point of practicing the Dharma, not as a hobby, not as a, when I only practice, some people, I only practice, like when I get divorced or when there's, a death in the family. No, you practice when you're happy, you practice when you're sad, you practice when there's a tragedy, you practice when there's happiness in your life. You practice 24/7 until the day you die. Because that's why we're practicing. All spiritual practice, all religion is a preparation for death, irrespective of Christian, Islamic, Hindu, whatever it is. It's a preparation for death. It's like that episode of The Simpsons. Happy birthday to the 29th anniversary of The Simpsons. It's like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer gets his fist caught in the vending machine, and then they get the fire brigade. And they come in and they open the door and they go, "What, Homer? Just let go. Let go of the can." He didn't want to let go, and that's us. We just don't want to let go. I want to, as I mentioned last week, I want to practice Buddhism, but I want to practice it my way because I don't want to let go. Because it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't, isn't it? When
you say let go, are you talking about life in this instance, attachment to life?
Well, I'm getting there. Yeah. And so it's the familiarity that we have with people and the environment. And that's the thing that when we're contemplating about death, which is a subject prior to taking refuge, that's when you're looking, you're meditating on death, you're visualizing what it is, what it's like to actually pass away. And the psychological or the physiological process that are going through that. And the analogue to actual death is we experience it every evening. Going to sleep is an analogue of death. You think about it. You're going out there, you're interacting in the world, having a good time, having a bad time, partying, whatever it is, making money, etc., interacting with it. But your day gets, and then slowly as the sun goes down, we slowly get our life, the circles, the concentric circles get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we're coming more and more back home until finally in the evening you come back home, you get changed, you have dinner, you begin to relax, you do what you have to do, you put your pajamas on and you slowly go to bed. Your world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. You less and less interaction. Until finally you're just in your bed and you're just aware of the comfy feeling in the bed. Until finally you can't even sense your own body anymore. The breathing begins to slow down, you begin to feel a little bit cold, hence you put more blanket on. And then slowly, then you can't hear anything anymore. And then, lights out, soldier, At that point, you're in the bardo of sleeping. But death is the same very similar process to that. Yeah? So, in this case, when you're sleeping, then you could be dreaming. When you pass away, when the consciousness leaves, the bardo state can appear to be like a dreamlike state, but in fact, it appears to be that way, but it's not. It's actual real state where you're confronted by all sorts of negative and positive entities. And depending on what decisions you make, if you're at that point, if you have all you have is all your experience, your worldly experience, then you're lost, because you're only going to be afraid of what you see. Just like in the dream, when you have dreams, you're only afraid of what you see. The more people you torment, the more bad dreams you have. So in other words, the only thing that you have is your karma. But if you're a practitioner, you know what's going to happen, because you've been taught what's going to happen. You've done meditations on what's going to happen. So you're prepared for it. So when you're in the Buddha state, when you've actually died, when you're in the Buddha state, you can actually remember your practice and change the way you're going to take rebirth. That's the whole process of consciously deciding what you're going to do. You have absolute control of what's going to happen. So the equivalent of that for us now would be, I'm going to decide what kind of dreams I'm going to have. Wow. What kind of practitioner do you have to be to get to that point? You've got to be razor sharp. And of course you have to be razor sharp. That's the whole point of meditation. That's the whole point of abandoning all distractions, all interferences. That's renunciation. And that is all based on being afraid of where our karma is going to take us. So we can say, I believe in karma. Saying, if somebody falls down and is saying, it's your karma. Saying it's your karma is the Buddhist way of saying, oh, God made it that way. Oh, this happened. Oh, God made it that way. Oh, this happened. Oh, it's your karma. People don't have a clue as to what they're saying. It means action. It means what we do, what we say, and what we think. Body, speech, and mind. Yeah. So not taking responsibility for our karma. We're definitely doomed to experience a negative causes. But on the other side, the Buddha says, once we do recognize all the things we've been doing, we've been misled. Constantly, people are telling us, do this, do that. And you really begin to wake up, just like in The Matrix, as people always say. That's a very Dharma film. The reason why it's Dharma is because once you wake up, you see that everything everybody's doing is a cause for more and more and more suffering. It's not a liberation at all. It may seem like they're giving money, but again, like I said with the Rolex watch, they may give money to an organisation, but then that organisation may have to put up a statue of them, or they may give money to a hospital, but that hospital wing is now named after them. So it's still pride. Yeah, it's not giving money without free, no tax, no rebates, nothing. No, I want nothing, just to give that money away. Very, very rare for somebody to fall into that kind of category. Absolute, no expectation, just giving the money as a benefit, giving compliments, giving the Dhamma, giving encouragement, expecting nothing in return other than helping those people. That's a rare person, very rare person. To get to that level requires a certain degree of understanding karma and our own mind, how the mind functions. In other words, a strong sense of meditation. So once we see that everything is really contaminated, which is one of the 4 seals, all contaminated phenomena are under the influence of suffering. Contaminated meaning contaminated by the 3 poisons of ignorance, anger, and a desire. Anything that is contaminated with those 3 poisons will always be under the influence of suffering. Yeah? And that's all of us. That's everyone that you know. Everyone you know. As much as you love them, as much as you care about them, they cannot be of benefit to us in order to free ourselves, because they themselves are under delusions. They themselves are only trying to help you as their daughter, as their son, whatever, as their sibling. They're only trying to help you because, to the best of their ability to, because they care about you, they love you, you know. It's like that. I'm always reminded of that tragic image of when the Lusitania in 1917, when the Germans torpedoed the USS Lusitania, and all the bodies started washing up on the beaches in Ireland. And one of the memorable images was of a mother holding her baby in her arms, and both of them had drowned. You know, to her last breath, she was trying to protect her child. You know, that's the pinnacle. That's as good as it gets in this world in terms of worldly help and worldly love, because that's it. That mother, as much as she cared and loved for her child, could not rescue her, you know. But the Buddha is beyond that. The Buddha is beyond the cycle of existence. The Buddha is beyond, desire, ignorance, and anger. That's something that you could look at the image of the Buddha for eons, and you will never understand that simply by just looking at them. It's something that you have to study, something that you have to be taught. It's uncommon knowledge. Yeah.
I don't think, personally, I don't think you can be taught that. You have to teach it yourself.
No, it's not possible to practice any spiritual activity without a teacher. You need to be shown.
I disagree. I think the pure act of meditation means you are teaching yourself.
It's not possible to meditate. It's not possible to be one's own doctor. You can't be your own doctor.
In this case, you can.
How so? How so?
The pure act of meditation is you are observing yourself. So if you're observing yourself, then you're learning from the actions of your body, whether it be subtle, the heat, the vibrations, and you're breaking yourself down into the very core elements of what your existence is. And from then, observing internally, that will reflect in the outside world. Because if you analyze the smallest components, smallest particles of existence in our reality, then regardless of whatever the material of the matter is, it will be the same kind of energy. So thereby observing yourself, you're actually teaching yourself, you're actually understanding the world. So you don't need it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, so if I can do this by myself, then why isn't everybody else enlightened then? Why aren't there more enlightened beings?
It's very hard. Because there's no teacher for the Buddha.
There was a teacher for the Buddha. The Buddha in the Mahayana tradition, we say that the Buddha was enlightened eons ago. And the Buddha took rebirth the way we know the Buddha took rebirth historically in order to show the way, in order to reintroduce the Buddha Dharma into the world, because Buddhism had died out. Prior to that was Buddha Kashyapa. So when that died out, then the pledge that the 1,000 Buddhas of this eon made, and the current Buddha is the 4th Buddha in line of this eon. Eon meaning the time of the Big Bang, to the way the universe expands and the way it contracts and disappears again. That's one eon, which is 10 to the power of 59 years. All right? So the 1,000 Buddhas who pledged that they would appear during this eon, when the 3rd Buddha Kashyapa's teaching totally died out in the world, then it was time for the fourth Buddha, which is Shakyamuni Buddha, to arrive. He was perfectly enlightened. He took rebirth deliberately in order to reintroduce Buddha Dharma to this world, because no normal child upon birth stands up and takes steps in the 4 directions saying, "This is my last rebirth." That's not a normal being. That's an enlightened being. Okay, so the Buddha did have teachers eons and eons and eons ago, where he spent long time getting a little bit of teaching, and then many lifetimes later he would get more and more teachings. Finally he collated those teachings, and took him 3 eons to achieve perfect enlightenment. Perfect enlightenment. So it's cause, it's dependent arising. Nothing can happen without a cause. It's not possible. A sword cannot cut itself. Yeah? It needs the guidance. We need the guidance of it, the pointing out instructions. This is this, this is that. And again, if we could do it ourselves, what fool would choose to suffer? What person would choose to suffer voluntarily? No one. Everybody's trying to find a way out. That's why everybody's taking drugs. Everybody's trying to self-medicate in some way or another. Work for some people is self-medication. Traveling is self-medication. As long as I keep moving, I don't have to think. I don't have those thoughts in my mind. So people are kept busy all the time. So if we could do it ourselves, we would have done it. We would be perfectly enlightened and free.
And just to confirm, when you say that we all need a teacher, you're talking about one teacher from the moment we commence this practice until the end? Or are we open to...
Well, that's what I'm going to talk about. That's what I'm going to talk about next time around. But we could still, let's make it a smorgasbord. There's no problem here. We just talk what happened.
I'm asking this question because I would agree also in my experience that it may not be one particular teacher that I would have, but there would be someone who teaches me something of the Dhamma here, and then through even sitting down and learning how to practice, learning how to observe, I had to take instructions from people. If I just sat down in a room, I wouldn't know what to do. So even very simple instructions, I would still hold that as a teaching in that regard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I understand where you're coming from because I don't necessarily have one teacher that I subscribe to, but I am open to teachers in different forms and capacities that teach me at different times what I need.
Yeah, even in the Pali text, the factors for Sotapanna is words of another and appropriate attention. So and that's why it's when we pay homage, Savaka Sango. Savaka means to hear. So we hear the Dhamma, then we practice.
Did you say Sava?
Sava.
Sava means to hear.
Yeah, so it's Savaka Sango. We hear the Dhamma and then we practice. So you are right in that sense. But what Robert is saying is we need the instructions, unless you're Pacceka Buddha.
Well, it's impossible to, unless you yourself are destined to be the next Buddha, unless you have that karma. But that again is dependent on previous causes and conditions. It's not like spontaneously out of nowhere. If you believe that, then you're following a different philosophical school of Buddhism. In this case, we're following the Madhyamika Prasangika school in the school of Tibetan Buddhism, which is the highest form, which is the definitive form that the Buddha taught, And so, if you believe that things can spontaneously occur of their own accord, if you believe that things exist inherently of their own accord, then that is a non-Buddhist philosophy actually. Because no school of Buddhism believes that things truly inherently exist, There are variations of that philosophy in different schools of Buddhism, but none of them would say that things truly inherently exist, because that's not what the Buddha taught, if you read the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So, the teacher is based upon the image of the Buddha. The Buddha is the one who achieved enlightenment, and the Dharma is that the Buddha is dependent upon the Dharma itself for his enlightenment. That's why we take refuge in the Dharma, and the Dharma is actually the real refuge. It's not the Buddha, it's not the Sangha, it's the Dharma, because without the Dharma there is no Buddha. So the Dharma is actually the refuge, the true refuge. And the Dharma itself exists in two forms. One is through realizational, in the mind of an enlightened being, and the other is through scriptural, in texts. So if you're a true Buddhist, you don't put the text on the ground. You don't step over it. You don't discard it as a cheap novel or something like that, and you don't give it to people who are disrespectful of the Dhamma. That's one of the incursions of being a Buddhist, because you've just created. If you don't know that, you don't know that. But now that you know that, then don't do that. So, the Buddha is the example of all the teachers, and should you have one teacher or many teachers? Well, it depends on, again, it depends on your karma. You know, a lot of people get a little bit panic-stricken when you say, oh, well, you know, you need a teacher. Well, where do I find this person, you know? Well, it depends on you. It depends on how much you're willing to put effort into your own spiritual education. If you're really going to be digging deep into this, and you put time and effort and begin to study it, etc., soon you'll find that you will find teachers coming out of the woodwork that you will be drawn to, etc. But the one teacher, the principal teacher, or the root guru, as we say, that's something that happens when you're ready to really practice the Dharma. It's not something that everybody comes across. It's a person, he or she, that you have a very strong connection with. Whatever they say, it gels with you. So you could have gone to many Dharma centers, read many books, and then when you meet this particular one person and they say something, so that's what that means. That's what that means. In other words, the person that you have the strongest karmic connection with to teach you the Dhamma, that is your principal teacher. Because when they say something, I get it, okay, I've been trying to figure that out. I get it, I get it, you know. It's like with me last week when I said my teacher, when I asked him a question, is it this or is it that? And he said it's the same. It took me 2 years to figure that out. Because that was my root guru that told me that. If somebody else told me, I wouldn't have believed them. Because I don't have the karmic connection with those people. Yeah? So that's one teacher like that. It was like, it's also with Joa Tisha, who travelled to Java to receive teachings on bodhicitta. He had many teachers. He had like about 180 teachers. But his main teacher was Selimpa from Java, because he's the one who taught him about bodhicitta, about the great compassion. And he always regarded Selimpa as his principal teacher, his number one teacher. All the others were, you know, just teachers, but they weren't really the most important ones in his life. So yes, you can have many teachers, you can attend many teachings, provided they don't contradict one another, provided you don't get confused. Because this one's saying that one's saying... If that's happening, then stop that, because you're only confusing your own mind, you know. So you can have many teachers if they're all, you know, conforming and you know, they all make sense to you. But only one of those would really be the one that you'll find is the one that you will go back to time and time and time again, and the one that will give you and explain those teachings to you, you know. It's just like any other relationship that you may have in your life, you know, personal relationship, business relationship, you know, one person that you trust for that guidance. So it can seem that all we need is a book and some videos and DVDs or whatever, and we can do this ourselves. It can seem that way, and I agree, it can seem that way. But the truth is, it's not that way, because if it was, we would be enlightened by now. We would have renunciation, we'd have bodhicitta, and we would have correct view, 3 principles of the path. We would have done it. And that's the proof of the pudding. So that's the whole basis in taking refuge, is seeing that the Buddha has done this. The Buddha's qualities are beyond comprehension, what it means to be perfectly, fully, totally, irreversibly enlightened. That's what we're looking at. Once we see that, then we don't take refuge in worldly people. We don't take refuge in sporting heroes. We don't take refuge in political and corporate heroes. We don't take refuge in spirits who live in trees and mountains, whatever, even though they can kill us. We don't take refuge in those sentient beings who are more deluded than we are. Yes, they may have the ability to do all sorts of spiritual hocus pocus, whatever it is, but still they are suffering, and they will be take a future rebirth will be a still even lower state of existence. But we have a precious human rebirth. At this point, we can decide whether we go up or whether we go down. Sentient beings who are suffering, human and non-human sentient beings who are suffering, don't have that choice because they don't understand that there's a way out. They don't believe that there's a way out. So, just briefly so the Buddha himself is free from all fears, as I mentioned last time. The Buddha is skilled in the ways of liberating others from all fears, because only somebody who is fearless can help somebody who is afraid. That's logical. So look within ourselves and you say, well, yeah, I'm still jealous, I'm still resentful. Well, you're not a Buddha. You haven't done anything. All we have to do is just look inside, and you'll see how difficult it is to do it yourself. It's an illusion. It's an incredible illusion. Because in the world that we're brought up in, maybe we do everything ourselves. We look after this, we've always been independent, we've always done this and we've always done this, we've always been the alpha in every single situation that we've done. That may be the case. But here's the problem now. To get real freedom, we need to be a student, a disciple. And for a lot of people, that's a hard pill to swallow, because now you have to play second fiddle to your guru or to your teacher. And that a lot of people, that ain't going to happen, because I'm not prostrating, I'm not giving anything to anyone, because I don't trust anyone. Why? Because that's the way I've been brought up. That's my experience in life. Been hurt too many times. Can't let go. So the biggest psychological challenge for those of you who are genuinely serious about Buddhism per se and all spiritual practice, the biggest psychological hurdle you will have to come is having faith in your teacher. For a lot of people, ordained included, it's still something that they're working on. It's a huge, huge task to put yourself in the hands of a correct person, to find a correct person, somebody who is willing, has the qualifications to do this. It's an incredibly difficult task. And the reason why we have a problem with that is because we've put ourselves, either this life or previous lifetimes, in the hands of corrupt people. Therefore, we don't trust anyone. When we come across a genuine article, a genuine spiritual friend, as sometimes the Lama is called, or the teacher is called, we don't believe that. Of course we don't believe that because our karmic obscurations hide us. We've been hurt too many times. We look at it in a worldly sense. A lot of people don't want to get into relationships anymore because they've been hurt too many times. Look at it even more. When people, I don't want to have a pet dog or a cat anymore because every time they die, it's just too much suffering. I don't want to have a relationship with a pet anymore. I feel so sorry for them, you know. And there are a lot of people that genuinely believe that. No more pets, no more girlfriend, boyfriends, husbands or wives. That's the end of that because it's too much pain. It's just too much pain. And in a spiritual sense, that's it. I don't need a teacher. I'm going to do this my way. Think about it. Just think about it. It's something we have to analyze. Nobody's asking you to do something that you don't want to do. Never, ever, in a spiritual sense, can you force somebody to do something that they don't. If they don't have the karma for it, it's fine. Here are the tools. You go and do what you think is right. Hopefully, their karma will diminish enough. A little bit will open, you know, and they will actually then come and say, yeah, okay, let's try this, you know. It's like Spike Milligan said, blessed are the cracked, for they shall let in the light. You know, just that little is enough to see what's true, what's not, you know. It's a very, very big hurdle. It's a very, very big hurdle. It is the biggest challenge. And the teacher is, as I mentioned before, the teacher is the intermediary, the ambassador, if you like, of the Buddha. Because we don't have the karma to be around it when the Buddha was around and received teachings directly. We only now have the blessings of our teacher. And the Buddha himself said, after I'm gone, the Sangha will be there to help. Yeah, will be there to help. And also I will manifest in numerous forms in order to be of assistance to sentient beings. So, by not being ready psychologically to be led, to be instructed by a teacher, then we delay our spiritual practice. Because we need somebody to say, well, look, this is that. Because, as I said, cause and effect, nothing exists inherently. Nothing can be spontaneously occur and say, well, there it is, it's done. It's a very, very difficult subject, and of course it's open to, as we've seen recently and have seen before, it's open to a lot of abuse, and you have to be very, very careful how you choose, who you decide to follow. You know, it's just, you know, not diving into the deep end. You know, it's slow. You know, what fool dives into a hot bathtub straight away? No one. You get scolded. But if you gently ease yourself into it, you get acclimatized. Ah, it's nice. And that's exactly the way we should be getting ourselves involved in a spiritual practice. Not diving in straight away, not trying to put a finger in every pie and try to get everything and say, oh, I understand everything, that's it, it's finished. What? And you see that for people that have been in the Dharma for 10 years or more, and they've read all sorts of things, they've done all sorts of things, and they say, well, okay, I get it, and they move on. They sort of move on in inverted commas. And yet they haven't done anything. Because they think it's just reading and you know the definitions, you know the meaning of this, you've been on the pilgrimages, etc., and you think, that doesn't make you a Buddhist. Incense, light offerings, food offerings, it doesn't make you a Buddhist. What makes you a Buddhist is to see there is suffering in the world. I can't do this. I need a guide. I need somebody who has freed themselves. That person is the Buddha. The medicine is the Dharma. That is the actual medicine that I have to now incorporate within my consciousness to free myself. And the Sangha are there to support me, the monks and nuns. That's what it means to walk in the footsteps of the Buddha. To do as he has done. To do as he has done. Yeah? How did you do it? Well, here we go. I'll show you the way. So it's huge. For a lot of people, it's a shock because you realise you've been misled by this person, you've been misled by that person. Our own karma, our own life has misled us into thinking that everything that we have is rock solid. It will stay that way. But as you get older and older, you begin to see people, friends, relationships dissolve, work. You have to retire from work, friends begin to die away, family begins to die away. And should you live long enough, everyone that you knew, everyone from school, everyone at work, all your family, immediate family, has passed away. Now you've got great-great-grandchildren that you don't even know who they are, just little kids running around. But your sons and daughters have all passed away. All your friends passed away. Where is everybody going? This is what the Buddha is teaching us. So, the Buddha is skilled in the ways of liberating others from all fear. What fear? Well, you're looking at me, please, you know, lots of arguments have broken out simply by somebody looking at you. What are you looking at? And away we go. What's all that about? You know, we are so how do you say? So caught up into this self-cherishing mind that if somebody looks at us the wrong way, it's rock and roll time. You know, it's really, I don't like the way you're looking at me, and away we go. How deluded can that be? You know, and you can see that even in dogs. You never look a dog in the eyes. Never look an animal in the eye, because it's a sign of aggression, you know. What's the aggression? Well, you're on my turf, you're my territory. I need to protect this, you know. It's all me, me, me. I.
I actually have a... That's actually not completely true. With animals often can actually tell, they actually respond much nicer to human beings. Actually look at them and they smile and they recognize that, because the facial recognition is very similar to animals as human beings. So if you smile and you look at them, they'll actually know that, and they'll actually be kinder towards you next time. It's actually pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean...
It's not necessarily a sign of aggression, that's all.
No, it's not so. It depends on the dog. It depends on the dog. But there are, you know, I know that somebody did get bitten once because they looked at a dog in the eyes, and even though they were smiling, because the dog was an aggressive dog, they bit them, you know. So it's a sign of an, you know, depending on the state of mind, because you can't read the other sentient being's mind. You know, you may be smiling on the inside, but because the other person or the animal is angry, it's a totally different karmic scenario, and they will act according to their karma. You're acting towards your karma, they're acting towards their karma. Sometimes they're in sync, sometimes they're out of sync. So if you look at somebody, you're walking down the street, you look at somebody, you look at them, you know, they may think, what are you looking at, or whatever it is. So it's all karmic. It all depends on what the situation is, what the other person is. Unless you can read their mind, you have to really be careful. Now, so all these things I'm just highlighting in the sense that our self-cherishing mind, we are so sensitive that even looking at someone, we're already thinking bad thoughts, because that's our karma. But they may not be thinking like that. They may be thinking, oh gee, that guy across the road, he reminds me of somebody that I knew, blah, blah, blah. But the guy across the road is thinking, what the hell is he looking at, you know? Because he's in an aggressive mode, you know? So the Buddha doesn't have that problem, because the Buddha's compassion is universal. The Buddha only has compassion. They are free from any form of aggressive behavior in this context. Buddha acts with great compassion and fairness towards everyone. So the Buddha, whether you like him or hate him, the Buddha is still going to be doing you a favour. He's still going to be helping you, because he knows, he or she, because there are feminine aspects of Buddhas, like Aryatara, for example. An enlightened being, they can read your mind. They know what's going to happen. So they know if you're angry, they're not going to get upset, because they know the causes of your anger. They know that you're under the delusions. You've had a bad day, this is happening, that's happening, etc. So there's no problem. But for us, what are you going to handle? Don't take it out on me because you had a bad day. you know, we can't handle it because we've got our own karmic problems. We don't need somebody else's problems. Just step outside for a minute, take a deep breath, and then come back in, you know. That's our scenario. We don't have that compassion to say, okay, you had a bad day, whatever. We can't take on that person's suffering. Well, a Buddha can, because they're free of suffering. It doesn't cling to them. It's Teflon. It's free. There's nothing. The mind is totally pure, clean. Buddha acts on behalf of everyone, both those who have benefited him and those who have not. So whether you try to hurt them, as in the life story of Devadatta, or some of the other spirits, yakshas and stuff, that try to hurt the Buddha benefits them as well as those who try to help them. For our state of mind, our ignorant mind, that's the impossible. That's the realm of science fiction. To be thinking of your enemy the same way you think of somebody that you really, really love. That's oil and water. That's just not. I never even thought of it. I never even dreamt of that. Not in my dreams would I dream of something like that. But we can see that through when we study bodhicitta, the way of the bodhisattvas. We can see how it's practically taught that it's possible to develop compassion, for someone like that through logic and reason, and that's the key ingredient through Je Tsongkhapa's teaching in the Buddhist tradition, that the Je Tsongkhapa taught that through logic and reason, through study, through contemplation, through meditation, that it's possible to achieve enlightenment. It's not some kind of pie in the sky ideal that it's only for the Buddha over there and nobody else. Well, if it was only for the Buddha, then the Buddha would not have turned the wheel of the Dhamma. The Buddha would have just sat under the tree and that's it. And people just would have given him gifts and that's the end of the story. The Buddha had to be convinced by Brahma and the gods. You know, you have to teach. You just can't keep this to yourself. That's the whole point of it. That it is a practical possibility. It's possible to do this. The Buddha has said it is possible to do this. And there have been many sentient beings that have achieved enlightenment up to this day that have achieved perfect enlightenment. But we're not in that circle, so we don't know because we're too worldly. You know, we just want to know what our next door neighbour's doing or what the Kardashians are doing. You know, we're not in tune as to what are these enlightened beings teaching right now, and which one passed away, and you know what relics have they left, and you know how can I do that? You know, is it possible for me to do that? Do I have to be a monk to do that? What's going on? You know. So to answer that question, monks and lay people, for a genuine Sangha to be around, you need 4 fully ordained monks or 4 fully ordained nuns. 4 minimum for a Sangha to be viable. If there was one monk here, fully ordained, no Sangha are here. Anything below 4, no Sangha. Anything above 4, there's a Sangha. Monks or nuns. Fully ordained though, not novices. Yeah? On the other side, in this example, a lay practitioner who has a direct perception of emptiness is a Mahayana practitioner. In other words, an Arya Bodhisattva. Arya meaning a superior, someone who has a direct perception of emptiness. Yeah? If a lay Arya Bodhisattva was here, then there would be a full Sangha, irrespective of nuns or monks, in this case. Irrespective if there was one monk or 2 monks. Yeah? Because an Arya Sangha, the actual Arya Sangha, the real Sangha, are those who have a direct perception of emptiness. They're the ones that have freed themselves from that initial cycle of samsara. Right? They've got a long way. In this case, the Mahayana path, which is the Bodhisattva path. There are 10 more levels to go before full, complete enlightenment as Shakyamuni Buddha achieved. But nevertheless, the first level Bodhisattva has freed themselves from samsara. They are not perfectly enlightened, but by our standards, they are enlightened. Yeah? But by Buddhist, by enlightenment standards, they've still got a way to go. So, and the same thing applies if there's an ordained Arya Sangha here, who has a direct perception of emptiness, then there would be, even though there's a one monk and they are an Arya being, then there is a Sangha present. So it's the mind, it's the realization of the Dharma, that is the real refuge. So as I mentioned last week, when we look at an image of the Buddha's body in robes is the Sangha jewel. Yeah? The Buddha's speech, yeah, is the Dharma jewel, because he's there teaching. Right? The mind, the enlightened mind, is the Buddha jewel. The 3 jewels in one, in the form of the Buddha, physical form of the Buddha, like that. So for us as Buddhist practitioners, when we slowly begin to study these things and contemplate on them, not just listen to the DVDs and all this stuff, but just sit down somewhere quietly every now and again, read it, think about it, contemplate on it, and if you have the ability to meditate on it, and slowly absorb it here, not here, but here, to gain the realizations, then you will see that, you know, we have a long way to go before we can actually begin to take true refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And once we have developed that true sense of refuge, then whatever we give in front of the Buddha, one light offering with the true motivation of refuge, then we accumulate a vast amount of merit, virtue in our mind. It acts as a form of purification. Offering one lamp acts as a form of purification when you have that sincere refuge. Likewise to the Sangha. Irrespective of whatever you see with monks and nuns, if they're behaving badly, and Ananda says that in the scriptures. If you see monks, specifically it was said in the scriptures monks, but nowadays we have nuns. If you see any ordained person behaving badly, as per instructions by the Buddha, you avoid that person. Thank you, sayonara, you know. Why? Because you're protecting your mind. You don't want to gossip about a monk or a nun. That's their karma. If they behave that way, that's their karma. Thank you, I see nothing, I know nothing. You know, you protect yourself. That's the most important thing. Because if you start gossiping about somebody in robes, whether it's valid or not, then you open the door to all sorts of other things. Once you say that about that, then you're going to say about this monk, then that nun, then this. The next thing you know, that's your Dharma practice. You're just involved in the gossip and the politics of Buddhism. You're not involved in Buddhism, you're involved in the politics of Buddhism. And that's an incredible danger to get into. Why? Because that's the way we are at home, that's the way we are at work, that's the way we are in our social environment. It's all politics. It's all about who's doing what they're doing, how much they're making money, who's doing. The Buddha is teaching us to look within, not without. Why are you saying those things? What's going on? When you see you're doing something wrong, protect yourself. Take refuge. That's what it means. In here, start looking inwards. Only enlightened being can guide you to that place. No one else can do that. No one else has the ability, has the wisdom, has the compassion to do that. So, when we begin to take refuge, Namo Guruva, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya, the Guru, number one, yeah? You do that, it's not just words, it's actual feeling. You know what it's about because your refuge is based on logic and reason. You know what the advantages are, you know what the disadvantages are, which we will come up to later on. You know that the Buddha has the ability to do all sorts of things through the Buddha is able to teach the Dharma to as many sentient beings as there are. He is able to manifest a physical form and teach that person to their intellectual capacity and in the language that that person is teaching, speaking. So, for example, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which were given at Rajagriha, Vulture's Peak. Now, there are many versions of, there's the 8,000 verses, there's the 25,000 verses, the 100,000 verses, and there's the Lotus Sutra, etc., etc. Now, so there are many versions, but all of them were given at the same time, at the same place, by the same person, and yet there are these different versions. How did that happen? Well, all those that transcribed those different versions heard those things at the same time that the person who heard the 100,000, the person who transcribed the 8,000 verses heard it at the same time. But because of their karmic capacity, they heard it at different lengths. But it's the same teaching. Only an enlightened being can do that. So if a Buddha was sitting here, or if a Buddha was sitting in a circle and it was surrounded by people everywhere, everyone after the teaching would say, yeah, I saw the Buddha. I saw the Buddha's face. Because everyone around the 360 would think that they were seeing the Buddha face on. But they're not. So only an enlightened being can do that. In other words, an enlightened being acts without even thinking about it. Their actions just do for all sentient beings. It's just like they said, the reflection of the moonlight on when you see like on the grass in the moonlight, you see on the dewdrops on the grass, each blade of grass, you'll see there's a little reflection of the moon. Well, that's the way it is with the Buddha in terms of just giving. The Buddha's activity is just limitless unrestrained, it is not bound by conceptual thinking, because the Buddha is beyond conceptual thinking. We are bound by conceptual thinking. The Buddha has undone the knots of conceptual thinking. So, and the reason for that is because when you meditate on the true nature of reality, you must come to a non-conceptual understanding of emptiness. A non-conceptual understanding. That's when you begin to unravel the self-centeredness of the self-cherishing mind. So the Buddha has that activity of freely, just without even thinking about it, just giving away. Yeah. All the markings that the Buddha possesses, the Dhamma chakras on their hands, the halo, the brightness of the skin, the aura that possesses them, all those things are meant, again, for the benefit of all sentient beings. So when you, as a person who's attached to, to appearances or whatever, if I were to see somebody who I didn't think I disagreed with, and there is no way in the world that I'm going to listen to a Dharma teaching from them, But if that person was an attractive woman or something, I'm listening. Well, yeah. So the Buddha manifests in an attractive physical form, in a tall, strong, dynamic appearance, so that when people see him, men or women, when they see him, they go, "Wow, who's that? What's going on there?" They're automatically, like moths to a light, drawn to him and saying, what's he doing? What's he on about? I don't know. I just like being around him. What's going on? And likewise, when the Buddha taught his mother, when his mother had passed away, and the Buddha went to the heaven of the 33, in order to, when he taught his mother the Dharma there, the Sutra of Kishtagarbha, Bodhisattva Kishtagarbha, in the heaven of 33, the Buddha had to have an appearance more attractive than all the gods, because the gods are not going to be looking at somebody who doesn't have a brighter halo than they do, their skin isn't luminous or whatever it is. And in our own world, you'll see that. Very, very affluent people won't talk to you unless you look very sharp and smart. You won't get a place on the bus unless you look really sharp and you're wearing your Armani. People's attitude automatically changes. That's the psychological process. And so because the gods in the higher, although they live hierarchically higher, in a higher state of existence than we do, they are still bound up in samsara. They still have attachment. So the Buddha manifests an extraordinary appearance in order to attract them as well, because they are so drawn to physical beauty and desire. So everything about the Buddha, inside and outside, is all about giving and sharing with everyone else. Unimaginable compassion. Unimaginable compassion. To be helping somebody who is a mass murderer, to having somebody who's a child molester, somebody who's a leper, somebody who's just about to die on their deathbed, somebody a beggar. Equanimity, absolute equanimity. No trace of bias. That's the teacher. And all teachers, in essence, whether they are enlightened or not, have to symbolize that. So the minimum, as I mentioned last time, the minimum requirement for any spiritual teacher, irrespective of religion, but more specifically to Buddhism, your minimum requirement, you must have extraordinary compassion for the students. Otherwise, if you didn't have that minimum requirement, then it'll be all about you. Give me the money so I can buy another Rolls Royce. Give me the money so we can have another retreat centre in Switzerland or somewhere on a desert island or something like that. It just all becomes economic, So so these things are incredible. These things are incredible to fathom, and that's why they're not spoken about so much. There are three ways. There are three ways in Buddhism, in Buddhist philosophy. There are only three ways that you can ascertain whether something is valid in terms of valid cognition. You know, one is through scriptural citation, one is through our own senses, and one is through inference. There is no other way that you can tell something is valid or not, apart from those three ways. Yeah. So for us here, we are dependent upon scripture to tell us the qualities of the Buddha. Why? Because we can't, first of all, we don't hang around enlightened beings every day. We don't have the karma. Even if we did see it, even if a Buddha walked past us, you probably have, you don't know. But we, because of our karmic obscurations, don't have the karma to say, my goodness, that's a fully enlightened being. An example of that, when Lama Also Rinpoche was very young, and they took him on pilgrimage to Bodh Gaya, where all the Buddhas hang out. That you could be certain of, you know, that you could be 100% certain of. They were doing a circumambulation around the Mahabodhi temple, and all of a sudden, also Rinpoche just, wow! He saw a monk, and he just started taking things from other people and giving it to this monk as an offering. And they said, well, Rinpoche, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's going, there's the Buddha, there's the Buddha, there's the Buddha. And the Buddha in question was the late and very great, and everybody in all the Tibetan traditions say that he is a fully enlightened being. He is the late great Kunu Rinpoche, who himself was one of the teachers of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who himself was the Lama that taught the Dalai Lama compassion. Kunu Rinpoche taught His Holiness the Dalai Lama about compassion. So who was Kunu Rinpoche? Wow. So there was an enlightened being. But to everybody out on the outside, he's just like an old man wearing robes. That's because we have karmic obscurations. We cannot distinguish between right and wrong. We don't know what we need to abandon, and we don't know what we need to adopt. We are dependent upon scriptures to read the qualities of the Buddha. Who's going to teach you that? I could go down to my local library. My evil cousin's not going to do it. But my good cousin Ananda will. Yin and yang. So, it is an incredible difficult subject because it's so out of this world, so to speak. Because our world is just this karmic mumbo-jumbo. It's just about the beautiful Kardashians and all this, you know, no disrespect to Kim and all the gang. You know, it's that anesthetized perception of the world. Just have another teaspoon, just relax. It'll be okay. It's at least, you know, we need to go out of our way to find the Buddha. That's the truth of the matter. Yeah? We need a guide to show us the guide. The teacher to show us the source to the river. So, as they said, you know, the further you go up the river to the mountains, the purer the river becomes. Right now, we're right down rock bottom. We're right near the water, near the ocean, you know, and it's polluted, you know, plastic everywhere. I mean, it's just shocking. So we need to go further and further up to the mountains where it's more and more pure. That's what this is all about. It's not a subject that I personally like to talk too much about because a lot of people think it's all that, it's like Kung Fu Panda, you know, flying through the air, hassa, you can do this, you can do that, hey, you know, crouching tiger, hidden dragon, or as I like to say, crouching tiger, hidden hernia, you know. It's just a lot of pain, it's just a lot a lot of time trying to untangle the supernatural from the fact. A lot of people get too much caught up with the supernatural aspects of the Buddha. So the Buddha can walk through walls, the Buddha can read your mind, the Buddha can levitate. But how does that help you? So what? A bird can fly, you know. A magician can walk through the wall, you know. But how does that help me get rid of my anger? We shouldn't be awed by these things. And the Buddha himself said, you know, do not, paraphrasing, do not trust me simply because of my prestige or who I am, you know. Test the teachings. If somebody gives you a gold coin, how do you know it's a gold coin? You have to test it, weigh it, scratch it, see if it works. Likewise here, you have to put the Buddha's teachings into practice. Get it wrong, get back up, start walking, fall down again, get back up. Oh, that doesn't work. Excuse me, this doesn't work. Why does this work? Blah, blah, blah. You talk. You talk to the teacher. You talk to many teachers until you get rid of doubts. You debate. You ask the question. So, there's no such thing as wrong, whatever it is. You know, there's no such thing as a foolish question, whatever it is. If that's what you think it is, okay, let's talk it out. Let's see what happens. Let's see your point of view. Let's see my point of view. You know? Do you have an open mind about it? No, I don't. Well, end of discussion. The main thing is to be searching and to be open. That's why I said when you come here, don't look at the person, listen to the words, listen to the meaning of the words, listen to the definitive meaning of those words. Because if you're just going to be depending on, you go to the door and you see me sitting here, I don't want to insult anybody else, I use myself as an example. You see me sitting here, you won't even open the door because, you're not even Tibetan. What are you know, you're not even a monk, you know. What's all this hair business? Get out of here, you know. I'll go back in the car, waste my time, you know. It's as simple as that. But if you're not paying attention to the person but listening to the words, maybe. So the analogy I like to give is always somebody is a restaurant, you know. And this is an analogy not only for finding a teacher or following a spiritual teacher, but for spiritual practice per se, which is, you know, you see a restaurant, you're walking past, and you smell the food coming from the restaurant. Oh, that's kind of interesting, and you keep walking past. Some people will stop and be attracted to the smell, and they look in the window and they look at the menu. Oh, that's interesting, you know. Other people will actually go inside and see what it looks like on the inside. Oh, look, we might have to come back here. Yeah, I think we'll come back here. Yeah. Other people will go inside and actually sit down, and then they will order something, you know. Ordering something, then eating something, appreciating what it is, coming back more and more. Eventually, some people will be inspired to actually set up their own restaurant. Meaning, you've come across the teachings. It makes resonance with you in your life. It makes sense. You like it. You receive the teaching. You ingest, you put in practice what you've been taught, and you come to the realizations that are necessary to you yourself, through dependence of your teacher, have found independence. So the Buddha is teaching us to be independent. And a lot of people think it's actually the other way around. Religion is there to enslave you. Well, yeah, okay, if you watch The Handmaid's Story and all this kind of stuff, yes, but that's politics. That's not spiritual practice. Because they're not telling me how the leader of their religious organization achieved enlightenment. They're just telling me, do this, do that, do this, do that. Well, I mean, in prison they tell you, do this, do that. So what's the difference here, you know? So here, the Buddha is saying, there are certain things that you must abandon and certain things that you must adopt in order to free yourself. And this is what they are. This is what I've done, and this is how you will do it. That's following in the footsteps of the Buddha. So slowly through the process, as I mentioned before, nobody is willing to let go of something, nor should they let go of something until they've been given something else to replace that. In other words, you have your hands free all the time, full all the time, just like Hong. But unfortunately, the things that we have tie us down, bring us down, drag us down. They're not things that free us. They're not tools that we have in our hands. They're actually lead weights that sink us down into samsara, further and further. So the Buddha is actually saying, let go of that lead weight, and here's the tools that you need, one by one, slowly. Just like in the restaurant. First you give that, then this, then that, then this, then that. Slowly, 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 slowly. To get to that stage, psychologically speaking, you must have an incredible trust in the person that is administering the medicine. And again, so it's a full circle to what I mentioned before, how we started off. Any questions? So, a Buddhist powers of the mind. Buddhist powers of the mind. Just some of the attributes that the Buddha possesses. Knowing what is correct and incorrect about karma. Knowing in all its subtleties the maturities of karma. Knowing the various wishes of beings. Knowing the various classes of things. Knowing which beings' faculties are superior and which are inferior. Knowing where all paths lead. Knowing the afflictions and non-liberating qualities associated with the absorptions, deliverances, forms of one-pointed concentration and states of composure. Knowing one's own and others' prior lives. Knowing when beings will die and where they will be reborn. Knowing that the mental afflictions have been terminated. So these are huge qualifications. Huge, huge qualifications. Again, we ourselves don't have the ability, the capacity to see this. We are dependent upon scriptures and we are dependent upon realized lamas to actually guide us to this. That's why it's so difficult. That's why for us, it's the easiest thing for us to do is just to give in front of a statue or something and make offerings. But the thing that I would like to emphasize here in terms of making your life more meaningful and in terms of, how shall I say, to me one of the saddest things that I constantly see, the longer I stay in the Dharma, sometimes it becomes more and more frustrating in terms of seeing other people in the Dharma, because I know of people who've been in the Dharma longer than I have, and yet they still don't understand what it means to take refuge. And it's very, very sad. It's very sad because you're not really utilizing your capacity to its full. Because if you don't know how to take refuge, all the other Buddhist teachings, Hinayana, Mahayana, and then the Vajrayana, so should you wish, all those things are closed to you. You will never gain full access to them. Yes, you may read the books, you may talk with people, you may even attend an empowerment, an initiation, or something like this. But you won't know how to practice. You will always have karmic obscurations. What do I mean by karmic obscuration? I mean, you'll fall asleep when the teacher is teaching, or you play on your phone when the teacher is giving Dhamma teaching, or when you buy because you have a job, you make a decent wage, money is no problem, so you buy all the best Dhamma books, etc., etc. But as soon as you open them, you either fall asleep, you'll have dull mind, or you will easily get distracted. Karmic obscuration. You will have it, but you will never gain access to it. You will never have the presence of mind to understand what's going on, even though it's written in English. And now, I think practically everything, the Kangya and the Tangya, all the Buddhist collected teachings, and all the commentaries on those teachings are now in English. So everything has been pretty much translated into English, right? So we got access online or in hard copy, anything and everything you want. But do we understand it? Can we extrapolate the essence of that into our own life? How does it work? Only a teacher can show you that. The karmic obscuration exists because fundamentally we don't know what it is to take refuge. We're not willing to let go. So the Buddha's saying, come on, hey, come here, look, this is what we've got. Nah. It's like that story of the teacher was giving a class and an ordained person actually came into the class and they sat at the back of the class even though there were just a few people here. And then the teacher said, why don't you come and sit here? And then the person, no, I don't want to do that. End of story. So the teacher knew what's going on there, you know. And of course, that person was turned out to be very argumentative, disrespectful, and that person didn't have the karma to come anymore to that teaching, because they were disrespectful to the Lama to begin with. They weren't willing. They didn't recognize that person as a teacher. They didn't recognize that person as, if you like, but I wouldn't use this word, authority figure. If you've got a problem with authority, you're going to have a problem with teachers. As I said right at the beginning, biggest psychological challenge you'll have in your life is a teacher, because the teacher is the reflection. What you're experiencing goes back to you. And what you see in the teacher is a template, is a foundation for all your relationships. Personal, professional, social. Why? Because the teacher teaches you how to speak, how to think, how to walk. Ah, I got you there, Robert. Now you're telling me religion is all about imprisoning somebody. You go, no, because they're teaching you how to virtuously think, teaching you how to virtuously speak, teaching you how to virtuously physically behave. So when you go back home, when you go to back work, wherever it is, the Lama, through the Lama's blessings, or through the sugar, if the word blessing is a little bit irritating on the ears, I can understand that, as the word guru is a little bit irritating on my ears, you can use the word sugar. If you get a little bit of sugar from the Lama, yeah, then you know how to behave properly at home. You know how to behave properly at work. And through that karmic action of behaving properly, other people will behave properly to you. So you will, through the blessings of your Lama, going back to that word, through the blessings of your Lama, you have now changed the dynamic at your work, at your family, at even your social life. No man, I don't want to drink beer anymore. Yeah, I'll watch football with you. I'm not drinking beer. I'm not swearing anymore. And I'm not putting down women anymore. I don't want no sex jokes, sexist jokes, no racist jokes. It just doesn't feel right for me. Yeah, that's the rules if you want to be friends with me. Minimum. You don't like it? You need to find yourself a new friend. That's what happens, or can happen, when you put yourself in the hands of a correct teacher. Because we don't have access to the Buddha himself. We ourselves don't have that karmic connection to see the direct perception of the Buddha before us. Eventually, if you have faith strong enough, it is possible. Now this now goes into the realm of Kung Fu Panda. You know, wow, you know, heavenly beings and all this kind of stuff. But the thing is, it's that consciousness that I spoke about before. That consciousness that we all possess. We all possess Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha. Every sentient being possesses the potential. No, we are not enlightened right now, but we possess the potential for full enlightenment. That's the ultimate teaching of the Buddha, really. And so the Buddha has gone over there and he's come back. He's the pioneer. He's the explorer. He's the one with the map. And that map is here, the Dharma. That's the map that we follow. As we go, we tick it off. Yep, the Buddha said I've experienced that. Yep, check. And there's that. Yep, check. I got it. I got that. Right. So what I'm trying to say from my personal experience, I'm trying to save as many people as I can from not spending 20 or 30 years or even this one whole lifetime pretending that they know, within the context of this subject, pretending that they know what it is to take refuge and wasting their life. I use that word deliberately, wasting their life. I've seen that time and time again. But you can't tell them because that's the way they do it. So, hey, I can't, you just have to sit on the sidelines. And the reason is, it's because they don't want to let go. It's going to be taking refuge my way. Not according to the scriptures. And if it's scriptures, direct perception and inference. Three valid ways of, three valid cognitions, yeah? But if we're doing it to somebody who's deluded through jealousy, through anger, through ignorance, then it's the wrong way. So as I mentioned last week, if we're going to make offerings and then we're going to show off and we're going to boast about it, now you're using the 3 jewels as a way of increasing your pride and affluence. Yeah, look at me, I gave $20 million for a monastery, whatever it is. That's actually my monastery. I own that. What, excuse me? What? You own it? You know? Now you're using the Buddha, the images of the Buddha and the Buddha's teachings and the Sangha, the genuine followers, the professional Buddhist practitioners as some kind of tool of your ego. Wow, wow. That's incredible negative karma, incredibly negative karma. So we have to think, by using the Buddha's teachings as personal instructions, automatically we say, your personal checklist. Are you thinking? Yes, I am thinking that. I have done that. I have this, whatever it is. And it is painful. It's painful because now I'm realizing, oh gee, I'm really not as good as I thought I was. But that's the whole point of the thing. We never will be as good as we think we are because we are in samsara. There are more causes for suffering. That's why in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha says the first noble truth, suffering. It's not the cause of suffering, the origin of suffering. The first noble truth is suffering. Because he's trying to show us that everything we do in samsara is suffering. The suffering of searching and not finding what you want. Boy, I can relate to that, I can tell you. The suffering of searching and finding what you don't want. Ouch. Yeah? The suffering of being separated, you know, from the loved ones. Being separated from this body. Yeah? And the all-pervading suffering that exists all throughout this samsara, the universe, and all other universes. Why? Because compound, all impermanent things, all impermanent phenomena are subject to suffering. Why? Because they must break apart. As soon as things break apart, that means that something has changed through entropy. Something has changed from the dynamic from one state to another. When that happens, there's suffering. Because why? Because I want constantly to be in this form. Happiness. But because it's changing, because my karma is changing, because I'm aging, I get sick, I get old, and things have to change and shift, and I have to move on. But I don't want that to happen. So that's the delusion. The delusion, the ignorance, that things are fixed, granite, concrete, immutable, forever and ever, ever, ever the same. That's not true. It never has been. And that's why we have suffering. Because we want those things to change. For example, I'm sitting here now, it's okay, but soon my legs are going to hurt, my back's going to hurt. Oh, so I have to stand up. So I stand up. Oh, that's so wonderful, you know, it's great. But I stand up and soon my legs start hurting again. And then my back starts hurting. Then I have to lean on one leg. Then I lean. And then, okay, then I sit back down. Oh, wow, that's such a relief to sit down. But then again, my legs start hurting, my back. Up and down, up and down. But where is the happiness here? The happiness is not sitting or standing. It's the transition from A to B. Because I'm in pain now, by the act of standing up, it alleviates my pain from sitting. But by standing, I gain more pain again. So by sitting down, it alleviates my pain from standing. So the happiness that I'm searching for is actually not A or B, but between A and B. The actual shifting from sitting to standing and from standing to sitting. So it's the same thing. I'm so lonely. So you get into a relationship. Oh my goodness, this is not working. So then I'm better off alone. So then you're lonely. No, I want to get into a relationship. So where's the happiness? The happiness is not the relationship in this scenario and not the loneliness. It's the transition of A to B. You know, I'm so bored to be at home. It's so depressing to be unemployed. You get a job. I wish I was back home and unemployed, whatever it is, you know. Everything in samsara is that it's an illusion. That illusion is that middle thing. It's not A, it's not B. It's not those concrete things because they're not concrete. It's that transition. You know, somebody kisses you. oh, it's so nice, and then tomorrow they kiss. Well, hang on, I'm busy here. But wait a minute, that kiss is the best kiss in the world. What happened the following day? It's changing because we're changing. It's not the kiss because it's at that moment, the right time, the right chord, we were receptive. But the kiss itself is not the medicine that cures everything. Because every time you get kissed by the same person, it should provide an identical, same result. It doesn't. It never will. So that's the whole delusion about that. Now, that in itself we can spend meditating with the yogis in the mountains for 1 or 2 lifetimes. Intellectual understanding is just the basis. Now you need to develop a realization where you, from the head to the heart, so to speak, where you can implement that and say, okay, so I'm doing this now, but I'm not going to be surprised that this is going to now cause that problem. So you're ready for it. Yeah? The bus is half an hour late. What are you going to do? You're going to get angry, Is there a cause for that? What are the causes? What are the advantages of getting angry? What are the disadvantages of getting angry? Frustrated. No problem whatsoever, That's why those people who are practicing, we can see as the decades go along, you should be, as a sincere, genuine practitioner, 10, 20, 30, 40, beyond years, the longer you're into it, the more relaxed they are. Age has got nothing to do with it. Age has got nothing to do with it. It's the realization. The more they realize, it's okay, you become more quiet and more gentle. But what I've noticed is it's the opposite is true. The more people the longer they're in the Dhamma, the more angrier they're becoming, the more controlling they're becoming, the more impatient they're becoming. That's a clear, you don't need clairvoyance to see that these people just don't know the fundamentals. They don't know what it means to practice the Dhamma. They are wasting their life from a spiritual point of view. The foundation to all that is taking refuge. We are dependent upon the scriptures to understand the Buddha, the true meaning of the Buddha, the true meaning of the Dhamma, the true meaning of the Sangha. It's not common knowledge. And it's not something you can just look at an image and you've got faith. Because you will be disappointed by people in the Dhamma. That's human nature. But if you will be disappointed in people in the Dhamma if you don't have the tools to prepare yourself to understand what's going on. Once you begin to study Dhamma, when you see all sorts of funny political things going on, that's okay. Yeah, okay, I'm a little bit surprised, but that's okay. I know how to handle it. It's fine. Move on. Don't get caught up into it. Yeah? Protect yourself. Protect your karma. You cannot experience a karmic action that you have not performed. That's one of the laws of karma. If you get caught up in the political situation and you love that and you want to do it again, for sure you will be experiencing the karmic consequences of those actions. So, again, scripture citation, the Buddha's knowledge. The Buddha, just give you a bit of a life story of the Buddha, the scriptural citation. The Buddha.
Sorry.
Yeah, take care. Thank you for going. Thank you. The Buddha once told. This is by way of showing one of the ways you can tell whether somebody is enlightened. The Buddha said that gave an example of showing his qualities by asking a group of people in the village to give a sack, everybody to bring a sack of wheat and put their names in it, in those sacks. So a whole tons and tons of sacks were delivered, and the Buddha could tell from each sack which family brought that sack, without looking at the name in the sack. So that was one way that the Buddha showed his miracle powers in order to convince people that he was who he was. And through that, then people developed faith in the Buddha. Yeah? It's not an ability that most people have. and it's not an ability that most people will show. You know, showing miracle powers is not a way of 9.9 times out of 10. Showing miracle powers is not a way of actually benefiting people. Why? Because people will just get caught up thinking that, well, you know, all you've got to do is just click your fingers and all my problems will be gone. And you can understand that when people see somebody who's in a superior position, you know, that they're going to do it all for me. But that's not, again, that's not what the Buddha is teaching. The Buddha is, all those miracle powers are a byproduct of the Buddha's enlightenment. And even before a fully enlightened being, an arhat and a bodhisattva, and all those pratyeka Buddhas, they all have miracle powers. The ability to, you know, the upper part of their body to be in flames and the lower part of their body to be in water, for example. You know, so what? You know, it's just a byproduct of their meditation. It doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit anyone other than us who are on the path to enlightenment, because it shows to us, that's a signpost. That shows if I meditate long enough, I too should have those abilities, which is a signpost not to just have those abilities, but to continue on the path to full enlightenment. That's all it is. It's like you see a sign that says, you know, Melbourne, you know, 100 Ks. That's all it is. You know you're getting close when you see that sign. So it's the same thing here. If you have those abilities, you know you're getting close. A lot of people have been killed because they have miracle powers, you know. Modgalayan was murdered because, the scriptures say, because he through his powers of clairvoyance, he could see that a certain non-Buddhist group of practitioners, their spiritual teacher had died and was born in the hell realms, and every time those students, heretical students, would make offerings, their teacher in the hell realms would always get another, a batch of boiling molten lead on his head, so he would suffer. So every time offerings were made on his behalf, he would actually be suffering more and more. So he told Modgalayan, please tell them that stop making offerings. And of course, Modgalayan told them, and they didn't believe him, and they actually killed him. That's one version of how Modgalayan was killed, how he passed away. So in that case, miracle powers can be very, very dangerous to one's health. And also, if you're walking down the street and somebody tells you, listen, don't take this bus, why not? Just don't take the bus, all right? What are you talking about? You're not going to believe them. You're going to take the bus because you always take the bus. You always take the bus at this time to go to work, whatever it is. And you take the bus and there's an accident and something happens, you know. So clairvoyance only works for those people who have faith, genuine faith. And in the Tibetan scriptures, the archetypal story of that is of the old woman and the dog's tooth, where the old woman asked her son, who was a merchant who travelled between Lhasa and India, and she always asked him, can you bring back a Buddha relic for me? Like that's a normal thing to do, you know. Anyway, so he'd go, and then he'd always forget to even try, you know. So once he's coming back and he's just about to get home, and then he realizes, oh, geez, you know, this is like the 5th time or something, I've forgotten. So he sees there's a dead dog on the side of the road, so he takes one of the teeth, he cleans it up, polishes it, blah, blah, blah. He wraps it up in all this silken, you know, and all this, makes it really, really special looking. And he takes it back and he says, look, I didn't forget, you know, I brought you back a Buddha's tooth. Wow. You know, and she bought it, she really believed it, you know, she believed the story and through her faith. And then she put it on her shrine, you know, gold, silver, everything beautifully, you know, presented on her shrine. She made prostrations, light offerings, all sorts of things, you know. And through her faith, there was, over a period of some time later, there was that tooth, you could see there was light emanating from that tooth. You know, it actually started to glow. Through her faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. She really believed that that was the tooth of a Buddha, and she actually received the blessings of the Buddha. That's a very exceptional story. For a lot of people it may be a fairy tale, but there are other stories that are much closer to home in terms of time-wise, that are very, very similar to that. And it's always said that if you believe, that the teacher is a Buddha, then you will receive the blessings of the Buddha. If you believe the teacher is a Bodhisattva, you receive the blessings of a Bodhisattva. If the teacher is just a normal person, you see them as a normal person, you get nothing, because a normal person can't bless you. So it's our karmic obscuration, nobody else. So that's why, for a lot of people, it's dangerous to hang around their Lama. And there's a Tibetan saying that says, the best teacher is the one that lives many valleys away. And the reason for that is because you can't do anything wrong when your teacher is over there, because you can do and say whatever you want. But when the teacher's around 24/7, well then all the weird thoughts you have in your mind, you have to suppress them, the bad behavior, you can't burp whilst you're eating, you can't think badly about the monk, you can't think badly about the Lama, you can't think badly about all this. It's like a torture thing, because these bad things are coming up. And the reason why these bad things are coming up is due to the blessings of the Lama. Now, now that you're interacting with an enlightened being, your karma ripens very, very quickly. And it's just like a purge. It's like you're vomiting and you can't control the throwing up. Weird thoughts are coming into your mind. Angry thoughts are coming into your mind. You want to physically hurt the Lama. Now, why is that? Because that's the way we think everyday life. Oh, look at that idiot across the road. Look at this, whatever it is. If you're eating food, and somebody burps, what's the first thing you say? Pig. Now, if you hear your Lama say that, what's the first thing that comes in your mind? Same thing, but you can't verbalize it. So now you're suppressing your thought and you're thinking, I don't want to be respectful to the Lama, but I can't help it. My propellant karma is forcing me to think that. Because that's the way we act at home. When somebody burps when we eat, we say, pig, you shouldn't be, burping. But when you hear your Lama do that, now you have to, and then other things too. As I said, physically you want to, hurt the Lama, because that's the way you are at home. You punch somebody, or at the office, or if you're in a friendly office environment. You rough it up, but you can't do that because you have to be on super, super good behavior. Very few people can handle it. You go nuts. You really go bonkers, It's like a wild horse that you're trying to pull back and keep them in line all the time. That's our mind. So for those that are attendants to lamas and whatever, they must have, like Ananda, for example, they have exceptional karma. I mean, they must have, when we see something like that, we must rejoice for them and feel very, very happy for them, that they can actually do something like that. And therefore we share in a percentage of their karma by rejoicing sincerely for them. That's the wonderful aspect of rejoicing, compassion. Okay, any questions before we do chin raising? Now, one of the qualities of the Buddha, wherever the Buddha's body is, his enlightened speech and mind are. Wherever the Buddha's speech is, his enlightened body and mind are. Wherever the Buddha's mind is, his enlightened speech and body are. So what that means, when we invoke Buddha Chenrezig now for the purification practice, even though we're reciting the mantra is Chenrezig's speech. So wherever the Chenrezig's speech is, his mind and body will be as well. That's why sometimes when people do this practice, later on they dream of Buddha Chenrezig, if you're fortunate enough. I hope you are. Or sometimes during the practice you can actually, depending on your karma, you can have a clear vision of Chenrezig. The reason is because Chenrezig is actually here because we invoke him. So that's the qualities of an enlightened being. So what's the difference between Chenrezig and Shakyamuni Buddha? Nothing. Because they are the same identical mind one Buddha is the same as all Buddhas. One Buddha is the same as all Buddhas. So it's the same. Once you get to the enlightenment, it's all the same. They're all the same. Tara, Chenrezig, Vajrapani, Manjushri, all the other countless Buddhas, they're all the same. So whichever mantra, whichever Buddha we invoke, even though we can't see them, we may feel them, but be confident, because the scriptures say, when you recite their name, when their name is present, i.e. the mantra, then all the other two aspects, the body and the mind of the Buddha, will be there as well. So only a Buddha can actually give you a mantra to recite. Yeah? Only a Buddha has that ability. You can make up your own mantra. You can say, Elvis Presley, Elvis Presley, Elvis Presley, Elvis Presley. Nothing's going to happen, because Elvis Presley is not enlightened, unfortunately. He's not a fully enlightened Buddha. So therefore, reciting his name is going to be of no benefit to us whatsoever. But reciting the name of a Buddha, of an enlightened being, invoking their name, invoking them to come, invoking them to help us, and then taking refuge in them. Because now we have a little bit of an understanding of what it means to take refuge. Then admitting and saying, I have no one else that I have a strong karmic connection with that can actually free me, take me out of samsara other than you. And I'm doomed to make mistakes, to create more and more problems for myself. So therefore, I admit all the things. I take refuge in you, because I know you're there to help me. I admit all the wrong things that I have done, because now I know the consequences of those things. And I know you are only there to help me, not to admonish me, not to punish me, not to ridicule. I told you, see what you've done? None of this. It's there to accept you for who you are, and for you, us, to come to our own realizations and say, I've done that. Okay. No guilt, just remorse. Just, you've done it, now remorse. I don't want to do it anymore. Move on. Don't dwell on it. Move on. No guilt. You are the only one that can help me. And I promise not to do these actions to the best of my ability again. It's better to say to the best of my ability, because if you say I promise never to do them again, there's a 99% chance you're lying. And you don't want to create that kind of karmic scenario with Buddha Chenrezig, because our karma will force us to break that. So then you say, to the best of my ability, I will not do these things again. So 4 opponent powers. Once we have that, now this whole practice of Chenrezig purification practice becomes very, very, very powerful. Because now you're on Chenrezig's side. You're no longer resisting, because you're taking refuge in Buddha Chenrezig and the Dharma and the Sangha at the same time. Through that, we can receive their blessings. That's now the point, and the only time that you receive the blessings. Making food offerings and just saying la 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 and going away and doing your will, that you get nothing. You get nothing. If you want to receive the blessings from the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, you actually have to put yourself in their hands via the Buddha, i.e. the teacher. And it's only then that you receive. So how does the Buddha help us? The Buddha helps us by giving us the teachings. Yeah? The Dharma helps us by clearing the obscurations within our mind and gaining the realizations. And the Sangha helps us, the monks and nuns, and even to a very, very broad extent, you could say all the students and people that are on the path, they are in some small way Sangha as well, They are there to help us as well, to administer the medicine, to answer the questions, to guide us, yeah? So for that, for example, you could all collectively, as a collective group that thinks identically, you could actually get together and in a group pilgrimage, go to Bodh Gaya and go to all the places sacred to the Buddha, and through that see the Buddha's life and develop faith in the Buddha that way, and then the Sangha and the Dharma through that, and see through your own experience where the Buddha lived, where the Buddha walked, and reflect upon that. And that, the pilgrimage itself, is like a walking meditation. This is where it happened. And you think about it, you meditate, you do offerings, you gain the realizations. That would be very good to do that on a regular, like an annual basis, for example. Ingrain, your faith becomes more and more and more and more deeper. That would be very nice. So, through this chain-raising practice, we can develop the topic that we have discussed more or less all the way. We've still got just a little bit more to go through, just like a coda, which will be next time. And so we use now in this case as a practical example this chain-raising purification practice. Faith in chain-raising, four opponent powers, having strong understanding that as we're reciting the mantra, we visualize. Because the chain-raising speech, we're reciting his speech, his body will be there manifesting, his mind will be there manifesting, and we want to do what they are teaching us. So the only way we can please a Buddha is by doing what they want us to do. If we choose not to practice the Dharma anymore, the Dharma will disappear in the world. There will be no more teachers in the world. They'll just close up shop because there is no more reason to give the teachings. But by practicing it, putting it into practice, we create the cause for us to practice, for other people to practice, and therefore the teachers will come. That's how it happens. Cause and effect. By saying we don't want to do this anymore, it's nonsense, it's whatever it is, we don't create the causes for the teachers to come to us. We don't create the cause for the Dharma itself to exist in this world. So even the Dharma itself is impermanent. Okay, so let's do the chain-raising practice to the best of our ability as we're reciting chain-raising mantra. We